Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar today, where we'll be talking about one of my favorite topics, change, or some flavor of change, being one of the only constants in this world. And more specifically today, we're going to be focusing on the potential of generative AI's abilities as a change agent with what you'll hopefully find to be a pragmatic and attainable approach to driving business transformation. So with that, I'll introduce you to the speakers. I'm Robin Clayton, Managing Director of 55. We are the data company based in the US, New York specifically. With me today are Dustin Stewart, Data Science Lead here at 55, and Becky Sykes, Partner at the Brandtech Group, of which 55 is a part of. In case you aren't already very familiar with us, 55, we are the data consulting company. Our services span the full spectrum of data analytics and MarTech. We have over 400 experts and over 400 clients worldwide, so we cover all major time zones. And we take real care to pair our mix of technologists with MarTech consultants every time we deploy an engagement. So as engaging with consumers becomes more and more fragmented at an incredibly rapid rate, having a strong data strategy and data governance that can adapt is key. And we love partnering with our clients to help them build this kind of a strong data strategy that unifies not only the fragmentation of consumer touch points, but also the fragmentation that you start to see that happens within the partner and vendor ecosystem and even within the organizations themselves. And we believe that behind every strong GenAI strategy first comes a strong data strategy as a prerequisite. So 55 being the data company at the Brandtech ecosystem, I'm happy to turn it over to the Brandtech Group, Becky Sykes, partner there, who has become a leader in the GenAI space. Turn it over to Becky.
Thank you. So I guess it helps just to understand at the parent company level who the Brandtech Group are and our perspective on GenAI as well. So the group does exactly what it says on the tin. It brings together brands and technology. We were founded around this original belief that technology can make all of marketing better, faster, and cheaper. And as opposed to other categories like ad tech and martech, brand tech is directly in the service of brands, providing best-in-class knowledge and application of technology from a really agnostic starting point. Most technology companies can only sell you their own tech. The notion here is that you have expertise right across the spectrum. And our belief in technology as an enabler for marketing is absolutely supercharged by the notion of AI and what is possible with AI. So on the next slide, I think you'll see just a little bit of context around who we are. And this slide is really a testament to our client relevance. So we work with some of the biggest enterprise brands in the world on the challenge and opportunity of transforming their application of technology, which goes from in-housing to media to state-of-the-art influencer, data, and kind of leverage of the creator economy and beyond. We have an end-to-end platform as part of that. It's called Pencil, which you'll hear a little bit more about, and which was recently recognized as one of Fast Company's most innovative companies of 2024. So that's my humble brag done. But what's really given us a unique point of view is that we are both investors in the technology as well as practitioners using that technology in the service of strategy and of craft to deliver real marketing for enterprise scale brands. And so we really understand what it takes to connect data, content, and media and drive meaningful impact. And I think from that perspective, I'm certainly going to talk a little bit about how you deploy GenAI in a safe and responsible way in order to make the most of integrating it with your own data and the rest of your business.
All right. So thank you, Becky. I won't go line by line over the agenda, but I'll emphasize that we want to make sure to provide you the tools to take what can be, a big and maybe in some ways daunting topic and make it more accessible and approachable. So if you want to get started, you can do so with confidence and good directional guardrails. So we'll start with getting back to the basics, diving into a little bit of context about moving from AI to GenAI, how it's evolved. Becky will give you an intro into how to bring it into your company, how to think about it, considering how pervasive GenAI is beyond just the marketing function within organizations. And then we'll jump into some, hopefully, what you find to be exciting stuff. So the things that 55 that we're actually working on today with our clients with GenAI, not just what theoretically GenAI can do for you, but what you can actually do with it. And then we'll also leave some time at the end for questions. So if there's anything we don't cover today, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. So to the next slide, please. So when we talk about GenAI, I mean, honestly, I can't go an entire day, or maybe even in some cases a meeting, without GenAI coming up. It used to be cookies, now it's GenAI. Might be back to cookies again, but GenAI is not going away anytime soon. So anyway, when you look at this graph, it probably looks somewhat familiar. We've been through this a few times over the years. There were data clean rooms. There was the metaverse. I think before that, there was Web3. So what we're witnessing is the typical cycle of new technology adoption. As famously described by Gartner, this involves the phase of hype, which is kind of where we are now, right before it bursts, and you kind of see what you can really do before it plateaus out and the real applications become a little bit more steady state. And to make this come to life a little bit, you can use ChatGPT as an example. So ChatGPT, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, but was the fastest service in history to reach 100 million users a month. And this milestone, which is a huge milestone, was achieved in only 2 months, faster than both TikTok and YouTube, if you look at those. But if you look at ChatGPT's usage, actual usage measured in monthly visits, it peaked back in May 2023, so almost a year ago at this point. So this illustrates kind of a common issue or a common theme here. Content production is both the most visible application for GenAI, and it's also starting to see some fatigue and decline in that way. Not to say that it's gone, it's just that you're kind of seeing the general scale even out at this point. So if we take a step back and look at the history, AI has been transforming for a while now. And if you've been tuned in, you've been seeing these things change over time. So GenAI itself hit the market last year after, let's call it a decade of AI transformation. AI, as you know now, is pretty deeply embedded in our lives. You're probably all using it on a daily basis and hopefully aren't noticing it if it's done right. So anytime you search on Google or from Amazon, you spend 30 minutes in a trance scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, etc. That's all AI behind the scenes and embedded within your day-to-day experience. So within digital marketing specifically, AI is especially great at distributing content. It's great at giving recommendations, cross-sells, upsells, predictions, predicting churn, targeting, you name it. So there are a ton of applications already in use for AI. And then GenAI is just kind of the next step in this process, the next tool in the generative or in the digital transformation tool belt, if you will. So GenAI offers a new step, net new capabilities, and new applications that kind of supercharge the transformational impact that AI has already had up to this point in the last decade. So what it's done is this creates the conditions for GenAI now to be deployed faster and hopefully cheaper and more effectively than it has in the past decade. So we'll see. And then one call out too, I mean, I think many of you on this webinar are likely marketers or within the marketing space, but GenAI and its impacts are, you could almost say agnostic, but far-reaching and pervasive through all verticals within an organization. So processes are going to be reinvented with GenAI across the business, not just within marketing. And it will change the playing field. In some ways, it could be an equalizer. Some ways, it could drastically change who's best in class, who's a laggard. And it's really interesting. Like take CPG for an example, or some kind of brand or category that maybe has less first-party data than another. All of a sudden, all of that market research and consumer insights and the expertise that company has built around those functions can be pulled in and trained into a model, and the playing field can be evened across categories in that way. So tons of stuff. But taking a step back, because GenAI is so pervasive across all of these categories within an organization, and there is so much wide-reaching influence, it's important for brands and companies to understand all of the associated risks, the unintended consequences, and make sure they have a strong global, very top-down, in this case, policy before moving forward and starting to scale GenAI into their organizations. So with that, I think we could head to the next slide, and I can hand it back over to Becky.
Thank you. So we wanted just to share a little bit of our approach here in terms of what we call green listing of AI platforms. We spoke with a number of different brands who were, there's a paralysis that comes with the onslaught of the number of tools available and platforms and the different terms associated with them. And so many brands we were speaking to were kind of going use case by use case, some sort of application process internally to review platforms against particular use cases and approve them on a case-by-case basis. It's really hard not to have a very chilling effect on innovation if you have this kind of very unscalable process. And so we tried to invert that and define a kind of due diligence set of criteria that we could review all of the leading GenAI platforms using so that they were being reviewed in using the same criteria with one standardized approach, and then that we could kind of create some sort of classification system for use. So what we've done here is create this really broad set of due diligence criteria. You're seeing a few of the items here. We would review things like terms of use, critical factors like the ownership around inputs and outputs, inputs being your prompts, outputs being anything that you generate, the level of indemnification and any caveats to that provided by the platform, data security, and on into confidentiality, kind of infosec, which models were used, even the reputability and funding behind the companies offering kind of foundation models for use. We did a huge amount of this review sort of across the piece, and then we were able to look at a classification system. So for us, red meant you do not use this platform at all. There is some either silence on one of our critical terms or unacceptable terms of use somewhere in the mix. Amber meant this was a tool suitable for internal use, things like mood boarding, storyboards, conception, ideation, a lot of the use cases that we hear brands talk a lot about being comfortable with, because obviously you reduce that risk factor by not going external. And then green, where the tools were the most buttoned up. The work you were outputting could be client-facing, could be externally publishable, as long as you adhere to any kind of additional parameters that the business has. So it's really important that you still have, alongside a green listing process, acceptable use cases, and then any business-specific do's and don'ts. So this would be important around the way you handle data, for example. But this as a way of working gave us a really scalable, very easy to follow system that meant that we could really support innovation across the business, but done in a really safe, very deployable way. So this has been our approach. And then on to the next slide. Obviously, we pair this with great policy. So AI strategy for us starts with AI policy. You must have a policy if you're intending to use AI in any way. Right now, we think the really key underpinnings of an AI policy will be things like transparency and accountability. The direction of travel from a regulatory point of view is towards greater transparency, greater disclosure. So definitely erring on that side. It'll be important to cover off IP and ownership, the critical importance of having human in the loop, how you treat inputs and first-party data, what you're comfortable with in terms of the training data that a platform may take from your inputs and use to train future versions of a model, and any showstoppers you have in legal terms and being really clear about what those showstoppers are. So that's kind of the fundamental setup of what our policy looks like right now. We are just writing our next version of the policy, and the policy that comes in the future, we believe, should tackle bias mitigation. We think this needs to be baked in. How you're handling this should be both at a foundation model level and the way you're forcing features for yourselves inside of your own business. Also looking at carbon footprint and sustainability. The use of AI cannot fly in the face of other ESG commitments that you have as a business. And then how you're contributing to reinforcement learning. What does the model need to know from working with your brand, both on a brand level, but also on a kind of policy level around what is acceptable and what is a contravention of any of your terms. So building in all of those elements as we move towards a future policy.
Great. Thanks, Becky. So Gen AI is changing everything, but everybody knows that. The question really is how can we actually harness this amazing new ability to generate text, images, audio to superpower our marketing organizations? It may seem far away, but it's really not that far away, and it's happening right now in some cases. So if we look at the research, even at the start of last year, we can see that efforts going into Gen AI are well on their way. 81% of decision makers see Gen AI as an urgent initiative for their team. And maybe more importantly, despite the apprehension at getting started, 72% of decision makers who deployed Gen AI last year were actually satisfied with the results of those deployments. And while content generation has been an obvious application for Gen AI, plenty of other categories like customer service have come leaps and bounds as well over the last year or so, with over half of leaders planning to automate their customer engagements with generative AI this year. And in our experience working with marketing teams, this has only gone up. One of our core beliefs, even outside of the Gen AI world, is that applications need to be envisioned as a piece of the larger marketing journey. Understanding how potential AI solutions actually help either your teams or your customers along this journey is key for making good investments with trackable outcomes. And as Robin and Becky pointed out earlier, the potential for AI optimization extends far beyond creative output. AI solutions provide value across the full marketing spectrum, giving marketers time back for focus on strategic direction and decision making as well. And while there's tons of AI use cases that can empower marketers at each stage of this journey, the next few slides are going to dive into some of the key solutions for each stage of the journey, get you thinking about what you could be doing for your organization. And these solve key marketing challenges such as time-consuming market research and campaign planning, which is the process to derive insights from your data, translate them into actionable pieces of information, and then deliver those insights into the necessary teams, the necessary platforms, is extremely labor intensive. So Gen AI will help with that. And once you build your marketing plans, it's still labor intensive to generate assets. So how much personalization is actually lost because we can't scale these creative assets to match the level of insights that we're getting from our insights teams. And then even after we've launched our campaigns, are we accurately measuring the impact? Do we have clean media reporting that allows us to optimize on the fly? And then even just after the campaign, can we use AI to accelerate the analysis period and get even deeper insights? So we're starting to see that these key use cases are something that marketers can focus on to practically integrate right now. Let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper. So the first kind of part of the marketer's journey here is market research. And something that we get asked, considering how close we are to data strategy, we always get asked, how can my org get more from our data? The orgs say we have some data tools that have out-of-the-box data intelligence features, but it's too general to really be useful. And it comes up frequently for like CPGs or other companies with low first-party data volume. They want to know how can we personalize and target better with what we have. We don't have this endless large database of customer data. And can we do it quicker? By combining AI and customizing it to your business, we can actually automate insights generation and start to answer those or solve those problems. Which KPIs are drifting the most? Which KPIs are missing? Or what's the current conversation like around our product since we launched it a month ago? 55 has packaged this up into a platform. You can see it here on this slide that works with data warehouses out of the box. So your BigQueries and your Snowflakes, just add in the data set, ask it for 10 KPIs to track, and you're done. And this is, of course, not static. So you can, schedule for dynamic insights. So it can continue to update your KPIs, continue to update the queries, the data intelligence that you've asked it to create. And of course, we add in the training, the pre-prompting, the security, and the governance to ensure that reliable results come back each time. Jump to this second one. So in terms of like change management, adoption acceleration, this is a big part because what happens when we're actually able to generate automated insights using AI? Are our teams even ready to actually implement those insights? For example, we see with the death of cookies, we see many companies, especially ones that sell online a lot, they're scrambling to optimize their marketing efforts in new ways, but it's a really slow process to adapt. With so much information about new tools and processes that are spread far and wide across your organization, we can actually lean into GenAI to synthesize and process those documents, data, and even general marketing knowledge faster than ever. No more doom scrolling Google for an answer that's not out there. Instead, like the tool here we've built for internal web analytics knowledge, we can quickly provide answers as well as links to internal sources across all your platforms when someone asks a question. So change management solutions like this mean more time spent optimizing campaigns rather than trying to figure out how to actually get those campaigns off the ground. Even before you get them off the ground, there's still a major GenAI use case, a major issue, and that's creating and adapting creative assets. This is the most immediately obvious use case for generative AI comes in generating ad content at large. Everybody wants to do it. Fortunately for us, we're actually doing it. We have Pencil AI as part of the Brandtech Group. And Pencil AI is an enterprise-grade generative AI power platform that allows for generating ads at scale across different audiences and different platforms. And the ability to not only scale like this, but maintain or even increase effectiveness is what the key is. Content that's 1/10 of the cost to create, but is also 1/10 as useful doesn't really help us. With Pencil, not only are we seeing 1/10 of the content cost, but we're also seeing the cost of acquiring customers decrease by nearly half and the return on ad spend about 79% higher on average. In addition to new content, we're also looking at a new dawn for creative optimization at scale as well. Computer vision models that were previously not cost optimized for large scale implementation are soon going to be the standard, especially in conjunction with this new larger scale content personalization that we're seeing. And then in terms of ongoing management of our campaigns data, optimizing our campaigns as they're going. One example of something you can do for ongoing management is if anybody has worked in closely with the media team in their organization, they know how difficult it is to maintain consistent taxonomy across channels. It's very difficult to get access to clean, reliable data when it comes to media. And when we're taking weeks to centralize all this media data, we're not adapting, we're not learning. AI is going to change that. Tools like the one we see here on top of your systems, tech agnostic, will allow you to quickly correct your media data and make it analyst ready in a fraction of the time it took before. Another consistent problem in online sales, jump to the next one, there you go. Another consistent problem that we see is the management of feeds for products. I know personally, I've gone to buy something and the product description says something different than the photo, and I end up not purchasing the product because I'm not sure which is correct, and I don't want the hassle of potentially having to return the product. So AI can help fill these gaps without the manual input. We can deploy AI to pages with high bounce rates and get recommendations for product page information that might be missing or not optimized. Being able to adapt quickly like this to these errors in product feeds could be the difference between a good campaign or a very average one. And then lastly, in our little deep dive here into use cases in the marketing journey, AI is also changing the way that we analyze data. When hiring analysts, none of us really want to hire for technical skills. Of course, to some degree, we need somebody to have those skills to do the job, but really we want to hire people with good analytical abilities. Do they have problem discovery abilities? Do they have problem solving abilities? Fortunately, the advancement of large language models will make this more possible. Natural language analysis is now at our fingertips. So analysts, like with the 55 analytics tool seen here, can now quickly tell their data in plain English what they need from it, rather than crafting the perfectly syntaxed SQL query and spending 10 minutes on that. You can just tell in plain English, what do you need? And we can even create visualizations, charts, images, all at the same time, once again, just using plain English. And while it's not a part of the tool here quite yet, even custom trained machine learning models will eventually be a big part of this. And this is just the beginning. These analyst tools that we've implemented will grow as the organization grows, learning and adapting to the business, of course, with the key principles of safe and secure AI implementation at the core. So you might be asking yourself, after all these use cases, has 55 been successful in these use cases? Where's the proof? So the short answer is yes. And as a data firm, as you would imagine, the data analytics and the data intelligence use cases that we just talked about are extremely big for us. So we presented both of these at AWS and Google Cloud GenAI Partner Showdowns, and we walked away with key awards at both. And these awards reflect what we believe is key for generative AI, understanding the business impact of the applications you implement. Otherwise, you're just doing cool things, but not things that will last. And we're continuing to partner with these cloud platforms to bring custom client solutions to life within their stack with the right models and the right underlying data infrastructure. And then a couple of quick custom use cases that we worked on with the cloud partners. We, for example, worked with Google and with Gemini for a custom use case with ChronoDrive, which for those in the US is sort of like Instacart, an app that partners with retailers like Kroger, Aldi, and Costco to deliver fresh food to your door. And retailers that work with ChronoDrive are always looking to see how they're helping customers better find the items they need and increasing loyalty to their stores. And I don't know about you, but I personally struggle to keep my grocery list up to date. I always forget something. The other week I was at Costco and I was just pulling out of my parking spot and I realized I forgot something that wasn't on my list. And if anybody's been to Costco at 5 p.m., there's absolutely no way I was finding a new parking spot, going back in, waiting in those lines, even if I really did want another free dumpling sample. So that's where our application with ChronoDrive came in. With this new application, you can actually scan your refrigerator, take a photo of it, and it will determine which items you need to get more of. And it can also design meals using the ingredients it captures in your refrigerator. Less expired food, less food waste as well. Just one example of how things are rapidly changing for retailers with AI. And last slide for me here, we have WebHelp Enterprise, and this is another tool that we partnered with cloud platform. We partnered with Azure on this one, and it's a B2B sales assistant that helps guide the sales journey using generative AI. Let's say you're looking to place your products in restaurants across the country. It takes a ton of man hours just to contact each one of them, not to mention follow them through the whole sales process. That's where a generative AI solution comes in. Imagine as we move through the sales process, we automatically generate sales materials like custom icebreakers and follow-up emails, and not just generic ones, but ones customized to the data we've gathered about prospective customers. And I think you'll notice a theme here, and I'm almost done here, and it's data. And I've talked enough, so I'll go ahead and let Robin get us back on track in terms of that.
Thanks, Dustin. So let's talk about the keys to success. When we think about large-scale generative AI being rolled out, we obviously have to start with strong data foundations. So looking ahead, GenAI is definitely going to become ubiquitous in a way that it isn't yet. So just how everything is new, innovative, and then kind of comes down and everyone has access and becomes a commodity, same thing. So if I take that example Dustin just gave about the French version of Instacart, it's my dream to have a personal chef and have someone who can, help me understand what I have and what my optimal meal prep and what can be ordered, and also automatically ask me for approval to do all those things for me. That's my dream. And I can't wait for that to become ubiquitous. That being said, we have a few steps to go to get there. So before we get to large scale generative AI, we need to ensure that the applications are 1, useful, 2, practical, and 3, maybe cost effective, a few of these things. Businesses don't need to build a generative AI bot just for the sake of innovation. I guess some probably do. And we also need to make sure that there aren't unintended consequences of that application or of that Gen AI agent going off and doing the thing that we've asked it to do. Because those are the types of things that will limit their adoption as we try to scale them out. So all that to say, we have to start with the basics. First, we ask ourselves, is this in fact a good idea? What are the actual measurable benefits of this Gen AI project? How much would it cost? Would the project potentially be scalable? Would additional data safety protection measures be taken, to Becky's points earlier? And also, if I don't do this, what are my competitors doing, and what else could I be missing by not exploring this opportunity? So really important to go back to the basics, answer these kinds of questions first, And that way it can help you shape and refine your generative AI use case roadmap, if you will. Once you have your use cases defined, the technology has to follow. And this is where prototyping comes into play. So generative AI models can do incredible things, but we need to make sure that we are not only testing them extensively, but also applying a very rigorous consideration on the benchmarks that we as human beings hold as acceptable thresholds for success and failure. So a benchmark we conducted on some of the most popular models in the market revealed pretty wide discrepancies in performance task to task. I mean, obviously there's performance and compute and a whole bunch of factors to take into consideration, but for the sake of this conversation, think about a 5% error margin. If you're thinking about reducing your, let's call it the media taxonomy example that Dustin gave, generally, if you see an error rate somewhere, 70s to 80s, and you can improve that to 95%, or in our case, we see usually 99%, a 1 to 5% error rate there is pretty acceptable. You're saving a ton of money. You are able to measure media a lot more effectively, and you're able to make strong decisions to understand what media is actually driving the conversion you're looking for. Whereas if you take something like, let's go with mechanical failure, 5% rate on mechanical failure, if you think about all of the current airline drama in the news, or if you think about a 5% error of margin for something like a self-driving AI agent autonomous vehicle, it's a lot less acceptable. So we really have to be clear on the error margins that we think are acceptable and what the impacts are when we're thinking about what projects we're putting in our use case roadmap and how we're prioritizing them. So keeping people in the center is really, really key. So whether it's for change management after we're looking to scale, or whether it's part of the design itself. So when you think about deploying an GenAI project, think about the human beings and the people on your team as the directors of that model or the directors of that little GenAI bot. So they need to be giving the model guidelines, guardrails, and making sure that it's on track, that we aren't going to see unintended consequences. So making sure that we have the right checks and balances, and that the human approval of certain gates and milestones and interactions within the automated workflows that you're defining, those things are key. So as we become more and more embedded and ingrained with these models, strong critical thinking, strong analytic skills are still very important, and also soft skills become very, very important. Maybe you don't need all of the hard SQL skills that you had, or even more technical skills previously, but you do need some ability to help direct and navigate at a pretty scientific level, and then also communicate it to your teams. So a little bit of both is perfect. And then the data foundation, I think I said this earlier, I'll say it again, there's no real strong AI strategy without first having a strong data strategy. So you can deploy a model, but it's only as strong as the marketing data you're able to centralize and put into it. So I'm going to go to the next slide real fast. So generally, when you are deploying a model, or you're deploying a use case roadmap, let's say, take it one step back, you have, I don't know, maybe in this example, we'll say we're going to follow the typical discover, design, like somewhat phased upfront approach where you're prioritizing your use cases and working through your use case roadmap. Pretty typical. I think one thing that we see is before you even get to the implementation and the build phase, where you're starting to be able to implement and test and learn and actually see what your prototype does or your pilot is doing, and then you're able to measure that, it takes a little bit of time. So not only do you have to put in the investment of dollars, you have to convince your teams, you have to wait and see, and then at the end of the project, you get a pilot, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. What we're able to do today with generative AI is actually speed that up so that while we're doing the use case roadmap and the discovery and the design up front, you can almost picture it that in parallel pathing, yeah, we're able to build a prototype so that at the end you come out with not only your strong use case roadmap and you know exactly how you're going to implement generative AI now, tomorrow, in a week, further down the line, you also have an actual prototype that you can demonstrate what you've done, what you've discovered, and you can make decisions on. So it really expedites your ability to go through the analytical process and also demonstrate a direction, success, et cetera, and then also convince teams, stakeholders, et cetera, whether the decision you want to make is right or not for them. So it's pretty powerful when you're able to exit the upfront stages with a proof of concept alongside your roadmap. So we can go to the next slide. And the reason we're able to do that is because of what Dustin was describing earlier. So when we use generative AI technology, SciMap in this case, you're able to actually, without the technical skills you previously needed, build the flow. You're able to design it with less technical people, and you're able to do it very quickly with pretty much drag and drop quality. So being able to do that is what really enables us to come out with a roadmap and in parallel the prototype. And if you go to the next slide, I can kind of show you a little more detail of what that looks like. So the way we're able to do this is that while we are conducting discovery design sessions, we're brainstorming, we're workshopping with our clients, we're also in parallel pulling up, it's basically a SciMap is the name of the technology we've developed. It's pretty user-friendly, developed by our engineering and data science teams, and it facilitates the creation of our GenAI prototypes. So for example, the French version of Instacart model that Dustin just showed you, developed using SciMap. The big advantage here is obviously the speed upon which you can create a use case and then test it, compare the different models available to see which model is the most applicable to your data set. So basically which one most accurately describes your data set and has the lowest margin of error. And then you're able to make some decisions pretty quickly. So it's drag and drop. You have 14 different business grade models available, including some of the most popular, and we can help you walk you through it. We've done it internally as well. We've tested it out on our least technical and most technical teammates, and it's been great. All right, so next slide. I think that's all we really hope you enjoyed the time. You can now hit us with any and all of your questions you have. We'll answer what we can. Anything we either don't get to via time or because we generally don't yet have the answer, as this is a new and emerging view afterward. And again, thank you so much for your time and looking forward to keeping the conversation going. Opening up for questions. All right. I'm going to read out the first question I'm seeing. I think this one, I'm going to throw this to you, Becky. What are some key factors to consider when developing a comprehensive AI policy to ensure ethical and responsible AI usage? And I think you might have hit some of these earlier, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
Sure. So yeah, I think there's legal and then there's responsible and kind of ethical, and they are somewhat the same, but not necessarily the same. So I think an AI policy should have a fundamental approach to the kind of legal terms and conditions that are applicable to the business, and that make sure that make a particular foundation model safe for use inside of the business. Everything that you want, all of the kind of behaviors that you want to see won't be covered by the terms and conditions. So I think you then need to supplement that with some really robust kind of do's and don'ts. Where are you permissive? Where are you not permissive? And then getting into an even grayer area than that becomes like where ethically do you draw your own lines as a business around what is acceptable and what is not. So I think you can go from very hard kind of black and white answers around what is legally acceptable and what is not, and there will be showstoppers, as I said, things that you absolutely don't allow in a policy, to make sure that everything being entered into a system is both safe to be entered, and doesn't provide any kind of risk to the business to be used. As I think you've all said, the quality of the output is partly based on what you input, which is about enriching with your own data. You have to be doing that within a framework that is safe for the business and that is approved. As you move into the kind of more ethical and responsible usage, you might find that this changes a little bit brand by brand. It changes a little bit use case by use case. So, when you're talking about efficacy-based products, when you're generating imagery as well as recommendations, for example, then you start to get sort of more gray areas. So I think then it's about having the right kind of framework and considering what the business is comfortable with at a brand specific level. So where we're doing this with brands, it's operating at quite a micro level across the business. So I hope maybe that helps give you a little bit.
No, I like how you split out the legal as well. I thought that was a nice way to frame it. Thank you. Okay, one for you, Dustin. If some of these AI tools exist already within our stack, and I know that's true, a lot of vendors now are including AI and generative AI modules within their platforms. So if you're looking at some that already exist within your stack, like BigQuery Assistant or Tableau AI, should we be focusing on leveraging those or investing in in-house solutions?
That's a good question. I mean, I think one of our principles around data is that you really should try and get the most out of your stack that you already have. But that being said, that sort of violates another belief that we have at 55, and that's that GenAI isn't going to be plug and play for most use cases. You sort of get out what you put in. And for most AI tools that come out of the box, you're going to hit some sort of ceiling. So I think picking and choosing which use cases make sense for in-house and which ones make more sense for a paid solution as part of the GenAI discovery process. It's just not. I think, yes, you utilize BigQuery Assistant, utilize Tableau AI. They're probably going to be useful to some degree. But if you really want to get the most out of generative AI, I think customizing it with your own data, actually trying to get something that's not bespoke, is going to be the key. And it's all part of the GenAI discovery process. But I think we're going to follow up with some materials on kind of more details about how you can kind of discover the use cases that you have in your organization and how to prioritize them. So look out for that. But yeah, I think it just depends on the use case, depends how deep you want to get.
I even think about it from a crawl, walk, run standpoint. If you translate that to the AI version of a crawl, walk, run, maybe the crawl is enhancing what you have today. So maybe it's a little bit of using the tools that you have, but also in-housing some new ones to help drive enhanced efficiencies. And then I would say the second one, if I'm moving up to walk, is actually more bringing things in-house or using autonomous agents, if you will. So then you're actually creating value and doing something, reinventing a process even. So you're really starting to change how people work more than just add efficiencies and speed and savings. And then I think beyond that, we haven't quite got there. But if you think about almost like embedding AI-powered operating systems of the future, I think that's maybe a little further down the road, but I'm excited for it. All right, we have one more. From Nish, thank you very much. Love Brandtech's thinking and approach to AI. What are you most excited about as we move from leveraging AI for productivity, scale, and speed, and start to think about how to leverage AI as new elements on the periodic table? Oof, I like that a lot. And start to conjure up new possibilities. Said differently, what is the AI alchemy you're all excited about? Love that question. Who wants to go first? Becky, Dustin?
Sure, I can go first. I agree, that's a great question. And more we're looking at the fact that this kind of cross-pollination, this softening of roles, being able to blend particular responsibility across different elements is happening, but also so is this like modularization where each element maybe doesn't need to be part of a linear process anymore. More and more media platforms want just the elements, not the configuration at the end of that. Maybe you want to take what is a large aggregation of data, but you want to modularize it so that you've got just it's singular insights that can be acted upon, and it's the activation of those single pieces that make a difference. So I think exactly as you say, Nish, like scale and speed feel like the obvious, can we do it faster? Can we do it cheaper? Can we do it more? All feels like the initial piece. But evolving out of that is kind of, can we change the effectiveness of it? Can we make it significantly better or different? And I think that's where I'm starting to see more excitement, both from our side, but also from clients. Where do we transform the process using GenAI instead of just incrementally improve it? Where do we really transform it? And so I think that's starting to become a little bit more obvious now, like where the transformation maybe comes in things like optimization. I think that's previously been a function of only the data-led part of your business, not also the creative part of your business. So now you can see optimization in both of those spheres, and that's becoming really exciting. And there is alchemy to that, actually. There is, as you say, that's a chemistry. As you kind of bring creative into the performance end of the business and performance into the creative end of the business, and you can really change. And the same applies when you think about personalization and how you get more precise in your creative, in the way that you're precise in your media and targeting and application of data and decisioning. So I think as you cross-pollinate, that's where it's starting to get really exciting. And that is the revolutionizing, not just the incremental improvement that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, I think we've been looking at sort of the applications that, first of all, were like, why weren't we doing this before? Why weren't we doing this? This is AI. We've had it available for a while, and yet a lot of marketing organizations aren't doing it. And that's sort of the low-hanging fruit that we've been aiming to get, especially as a data organization. What can you do with what you already have? So that's one side of it. And then now you're talking about, what's this new, what are the new Gen AI use cases that we couldn't have done before generative AI? And I think that that's something really important that we're seeing in organizations, is trying to get the people in your organization's ideas on the ground, bubble them up, make sure you're listening, because there is really clever ideas out there that we see for custom generative AI solutions. And it's just about making sure we facilitate that. But it's definitely exciting. And maybe we're the boring data folks, but at some point it all kind of, it comes back to data, but we're definitely excited about some of these creative use cases as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. So if I bring it back to my crawl, walk, run, I agree with you. Initially, we're hitting the low-hanging fruit, the crawl, we're doing things faster, cheaper, etc. But when you start to get into walk and run, it's where all of a sudden you have more time, because you're not doing those things that you were doing when you were doing the crawl state. And all of a sudden that human element of creativity has time to come back out, and you can reimagine, in my ideal scenario, what is the best, most effective, most awesome way I should be doing this thing? So I think someone at Brandtech recently said, back in the day, it was the finance industry, and the finance industry was completely disrupted, and people were freaking out, and they thought they were going to have a job. And all of a sudden we went from like physical paper on a trading floor. But fast forward to today, look at how many billions of dollars are there, how many more jobs have been created, etc. If that is this moment for marketing, I'm really excited to be part of it and help to kind of reimagine and define what that looks like. So I think it's real. That's what the AI alchemy that I'm excited about is, bringing creativity back and starting to reimagine what it looks like. Okay. Anything else? Or I think we might be wrapping it up. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. We really appreciate it. We know time is one of those resources that no matter how much Gen AI there is in the foreseeable anyway, time is one of those constraints that you'll never really quite escape yet. Who knows? But yeah, if you need help getting your data and getting brilliant basics of data together so that you have a strong data strategy to underpin your Gen AI project or your Gen AI strategy, please reach out to us. If you're interested in experimenting with one of we have more than 6 at this point, but 6 out of the box kind of use cases Dustin demoed, happy to talk to you about whether it could be a fit. Or if you just want to kind of talk through GenAI. This is something we're really passionate about, and we really want to make sure is a really thoughtful, human-led conversation. To Becky's point earlier, we need to keep humans in the loop, and we need to make sure we're doing this ethically, responsibly, and thinking about it in the big picture. So please do contact us. And we also just put out our latest podcast on GenAI and how it's shaping current trends in different industries. So you can find us on Spotify or your favorite preferred podcast platform. Thank you so much.